We are back, and with the Crew letting go of Caleb Porter earlier in the week, I feel like now is a decent time to do a kind of a year-by-year rundown of how his time went with Columbus and see how his impact has lasted with this club and with the city. Starting in 2019, his first year on the job, the Crew finished with 10 wins, 16 losses, and 8 draws for 38 points overall. They finished 10th in the East, 20th in the league, in MLS anyway, and they did not qualify for the playoffs by 7 points. They lost in the U.S. Open Cup round of 16 to Atlanta United. They did get the Carolina Challenge Cup, which is like a MLS USL kind of thing, so not a big deal, but it's nice to get a trophy for something, I guess. This was the year right after the whole Save the Crew stuff happened and Greg Berhalter was let go. And it was clear that the transition between Greg Berhalter and Caleb Porter was a bit of a rough one, getting new systems in and all that. And it would have been really nice for the team to have been good this year, especially after, the team's sticking around, and it would have been nice to have a great team. But I do feel like the mere fact that a team was still in Columbus and still in the city was enough to keep a lot of people happy. Maybe not with the fact that the team wasn't that good, but just appreciative that there was a soccer club there to enjoy, and just to go to just be able to go to the games. At this point was definitely not taken for granted after what the Crew had just gone through the past year and a half or so. And that leads into the year 2020, where the Crew, with a vast improvement, only finishing 12, 6, and 5 for a total of 41 points, finishing third in the East, fourth overall, a lot less games because 2020 screwed up everything in terms of how many games were played in each sport. They did win every qualifier in the MLS is Back tournament, which were the only games that counted towards regular season points. They would lose in the round of 16 to Minnesota United, but again, they did win the games that mattered for the regular season points, and they only really lost in a game that, it would have been nice to do well in the MLS is Back tournament and maybe win that thing, but it's not a tournament that really matters in the grand scheme of things. Something they did in the offseason was acquire Lucas Zelarayan from Tigres. He would end up becoming the newcomer of the year and the MLS Cup MVP. A bit of a spoiler as to how the season goes in 2020, but we'll get to that, and you already knew how that worked out when you clicked on this video. Eloy Room would win Save of the Year, and I do think a really underrated addition, maybe not to Crew fans, but maybe to the national audience, was Darlington Nagbe playing a huge role on this team with his veteran presence, and just the skill set that he brought to the club was, I think, it was underrated and definitely something that they needed. So they would obviously get into the playoffs, being third in the East, and they would win the MLS Cup at home against the favorites, the Seattle Sounders. So just after 2 years after a move to Austin seemed pretty much inevitable, the Crew would get their second MLS Cup in club history. I think that this moment does sum up Caleb Porter's career in Columbus. I'll get more on that at the end of the video. I do think that this is probably the defining moment of the Caleb Porter era in Columbus, despite what we're going to get into with some of the struggles later. But honestly, this is the perfect Hollywood ending to the Save the Crew story, going from a team that's going to on the outs to be moved, and then the city and the people in it make a big enough stink that it convinces somebody else to buy the club and to invest in it. And then just 2 seasons later, they're champions, and it's crazy. So we get into 2021, coming off of a championship-winning season. The Crew would end up finishing 13, 13, and 8 for 47 overall points, finishing 9th in the East, 17th in the league, and they missed the playoffs this year by just 2 points, but it really wasn't that close as it seems in the end. They were in the CONCACAF Champions League. They lost in the quarterfinals against Monterrey, and they would win the Campeones Cup against Cruz Azul. Lucas Zelarayan won Man of the Match with the smallest trophy ever. It's really funny if you look that up. But honestly, that really didn't matter much. There was an awful logo change that I made a video on a couple months back. It's my first dabbling into just making really basically edited video essays essentially. But the logo change was bad. I don't know why a front office would choose to completely rebrand a team that just won a championship, but whatever. That has nothing to do with Caleb Porter, though. But this was the year when we started to see some cracks forming in the foundation. This is when the trend of the frustrating draws were common, or giving up late goals and dropping points in them. A brutal stretch between July 30th and September 13th of 2021, where they only won one game and they didn't get any points out of the other. So only 3 points in that span, and that came from one game. They did end the season on a 3-match winning streak, but by then they were really hoping for some very improbable table results. They didn't happen. And I think there was a bit of a weird kind of like cavalier attitude of like, hey, well, we weren't eliminated because we lost. And I guess that was true at the very end of the season. But when you look at earlier, if you think that maybe they could have gotten some more points or not given up so many late goals or converted on chances earlier in games, they were eliminated by dropping points and losing matches that way. Not necessarily at the end of the season. They just lost their playoff spot in the middle of it. But, it's coming off of a cup win season. It was, the team did have flashes where they looked like they were right there, but again, they would miss on a chance or give up a late goal. So you did feel like the team was just on the cusp of getting back into the playoffs again. They just needed a couple more bounces to go their way. Maybe they're in the playoffs, and once you get in the playoffs, who knows? So in coming into 2022, there really was no reason to change coaches yet, although there was a few rumblings of, hey, if this keeps up, maybe we move on. In 2022, the Crew finished 10, 8, and 16 for 46 overall points, finishing 8th in the East, 16th in the league, and once again missing the playoffs by 2 points. The season also featured a really embarrassing loss to Detroit City FC in the third round of the U.S. Open Cup. Just something you never want to see. It reminded me of the loss to FC Cincinnati when they were still in the USL. Something you never want to see. I wouldn't be mad if the Crew never played in another one of these games ever again, because it does not seem to go well for the Crew the last couple times they've done it. But Giassi Zardes was transferred to Colorado. That's a huge move for this club. But they did bring in Cucho Hernandez from Watford for a club record transfer fee. I believe it's 4th highest in the MLS, and his impact was immediate. As a substitute, he scored four goals within his first 90 total minutes. I know that's an MLS record for somebody's first 90 minutes, and I believe that's also an MLS record for any 90-minute span, although I could be wrong on that. I'm not sure on that. But even when this team was clicking at its best, they struggled to get consistent results. They were constantly dropping points late in games. They dropped an MLS record 11 points in stoppage time. That's more than you can count on both of your hands in stoppage time. That is ridiculous and unacceptable. And another year of basically the same thing that happened last year. The club has moved on from Caleb Porter, and I believe that's the right decision. I wish the last 2 seasons were better than what they were, because I do think that Caleb Porter did do a lot of good for the Crew, but it's clear that the team needs a different voice and a new direction. However, I do think his time with the club has been a net positive. Again, that 2020 Cup win, you can say whatever you want about a Mickey Mouse season, or any of the some stuff like that, or the MLS's back tournament screwing everything up, but that's not going to erase what happened. That's not going to erase the emotions of the fans of the club. That's not going to take their name out of the record book. That's going to be a permanent stamp there forever. That second star is always going to be on whatever crappy logo they come up with next. Hopefully some other group besides what they did last time comes up with the new logo. I can't wait for that thing to go away. But again, I do think that's going to be the lasting legacy of Caleb Porter with the Crew. I don't think it's going to be these last 2 years. I think it will be that MLS Cup run that happened on the tail end of the Save the Crew story. I do think that is a perfect ending that comes almost out of a Hollywood script. It's insane. It almost feels scripted in that way. But again, I think Caleb Porter's time was a net positive. It just so happens that the ending wasn't nearly as good as we would have hoped it would have been. So thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, please feel free to leave a like and a subscribe. If you enjoyed the video and like to see more like it, let me know what you think about Caleb Porter's time in Columbus and the Caleb Porter era in Columbus down in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching, and I will see you at the next one.